Hello, everyone, and good evening, and thank you for joining us from ICAN at the Combating Antisemitism Summit for the West Hollywood election 2024. This is a unique forum where we have our two endorsed candidates, Nickle and Jordan Cockeram, joining us from here in West Hollywood, and joining us from Israel, we have a former member of the Knesset, Ruth Wasserman-Lande. And I'll introduce Ruth a bit more extensively here in just a moment. This forum is meant to be a friendly conversation about our candidates that we're supporting, but also a informative conversation about the problem of anti-Semitism in America, especially as we're seeing it at the local level. So tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about that problem. We're going to hear from our candidates and their vision for their campaigns and for the city when they prevail, and any plans they have for combating anti-Semitism. And I've told them that, by the way, this is a unique opportunity here that ICAN is proud to provide. Of course, we hope that George and Jordan do win their races and serve as elected officials in the city of West Hollywood and state of California. And here we're affording them the opportunity to talk to a seasoned diplomat and a former member of the Israeli Knesset in Ruth Wasserman-Lande. So I've encouraged anyone to interrupt at any time and ask questions and or make comments should you wish. So with that, I will introduce our guest. Ruth Wasserman-Lande is a former member of the Knesset for the Blue and White Party. For those of you concerned in West Hollywood about Benjamin Netanyahu, Ruth probably feels the same way you do. She served as the Deputy Director General for International Affairs at the Federation of Local Authorities in Israel and was an advisor to the late President Shimon Peres on foreign and Jewish affairs. As a career diplomat, Ruth has served as Deputy Ambassador at the Israeli Embassy in Cairo and has extensive experience dealing with international relations, anti-Semitism, and global security. She is also the founder and co-chair of the Knesset Caucus for the Promotion of the Abraham Accords, focusing on strengthening the relationships between Israel and its regional partners. Ruth, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us. And just for those of you who don't know me, I serve as the Chief Executive Officer at ICAN, the Israeli American Civic Action Network, and I served formerly as the Political Officer at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for the State of Israel. That's where Ruth and I met, serving here at the Consulate General of Israel in Los Angeles. I've worked on major local, state, and federal initiatives on Iran sanctions, authored the California-Israel Strategic Partnership that were signed by Governor Brown and Prime Minister Netanyahu, and I served as the key architect of the California anti-BDS legislation. So we're very happy to have all of you here this evening. So George, if you wanted to just say hello briefly and introduce yourself.
Sure. So I'm George Nickle. I'm running for city council here in West Hollywood. I'm a 20-year resident. My husband and I live on the east side of West Hollywood. And, I started a neighborhood watch group about 7 years ago over safety issues and also quality of life issues. And I currently serve as a public safety commissioner for the city.
Great. Thank you so much. And Jordan?
Thank you so much, and thank you for having us. My name is Jordan Cockeram. I am an 11-year resident of West Hollywood, and I'm a business license commissioner. I'm from Minnesota originally, and when I moved to the LA area, I ended up in this crazy city called West Hollywood, and I fell in love with it, and I've been here ever since.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. I did want to note, Ruth is joining us from Israel, where it's just 5:05 in the morning. So really extra thanks, Ruth, to you for joining us this evening, our time, in the morning, your time. And if I understand that there are still, I wanted to just say for our audience, if there's a siren or anything, just let us know and we'll pause you accordingly if necessary. So what I'd like to do first is kind of set the stage a little bit and talk about anti-Semitism in the United States. Especially, we've seen it kind of explode since 10/7. This is just a headline that says, FBI director says the anti-Semitism is reaching historic levels in the United States. This is a headline, by the way, that's from October 2023. A little less than a month after the events of October 7th. And we see that a year later, it has been exploding and surging across the country in different ways. let's see, next. At the city level, this is what we're talking about here. Many people watching may be confused about what Israel or these issues have to do with issues at the local level. West Hollywood, in particular, is impacted by this because there is a large immigrant Jewish population in West Hollywood. As many people know, West Hollywood was founded largely by Russian immigrants, Russian Jewish immigrants from the former Soviet Union. And nowadays, the community, the immigrant Jewish community, is even more diverse, with a large population of Persian American Jews who have left Iran, and of course, Israeli Americans who have immigrated here from Israel. So these issues don't just impact or relate to a country a world away, but they also relate to the people here who consider Israel to be a part of their heritage or their homeland. And unfortunately, since 10/7, we have seen a significant activity at the city council level, actually, across the country, where well over 100 cities have adopted ceasefire resolutions that are, it sounds good, but they're largely ill-informed and filled with misinformation or disinformation. Some of them are good, some of them are well-meaning. But many of them are not. And, we'll get into later about the international organizations that involve themselves at the local level and help to push this kind of fringe extreme position. I also have up here a headline that, again, it's not even from after 10/7, it's from prior to 10/7, just to highlight the fact that anti-Semitism has been surging and rising since even before October 7th. This is a headline that was from 2021, when there was a Gaza operation in May of that year, and Persian Jews were attacked on La Cienega Boulevard, just feet over the border from West Hollywood. And so this issue does actually hit home in ways that do express themselves in violence. And finally, I'm just going down to the city level. We have serious anti-Semitism in West Hollywood. So many people know this. The vice mayor of West Hollywood formerly is a founding chapter president of Students for Justice in Palestine. That organization has made headlines across the United States this year because they've been banned from many campuses because of extremism and support for terrorism and other violent acts. Now, many people were confused about the vice mayor's history, thinking that a lot of this activity happened a decade ago. But the reality is that we found out just a couple of months ago that she's a salaried employee at an anti-Israel organization. So where West Hollywood and these candidates are running for a position that is a part-time job, or it's not a full-time job, it's kind of a volunteer position. Everybody has a full-time job. Her full-time job is running an anti-Israel organization. And you can see on the screen, it's glorified 10/7 with that tractor breaking through the wall, calling Israel, accusing it of genocide. And the most concerning thing is there's actually a fund where this vice mayor is giving grants to organizations that engage in anti-Semitic and in some cases violent and even potentially criminal activity. So these are serious issues that do affect constituents on the ground. And so tonight, we're happy to hear from candidates who again, support our viewpoints, understand our viewpoints, and hopefully have plans to address these concerning issues. So that's kind of setting the table, setting the groundwork. So I hope that all makes sense to everyone. And by the way, just for those watching, if you do have questions, feel free to leave questions in the comment wherever you're watching, on YouTube, Facebook, and we can put it on the screen. So with that, I will let the candidates begin their brief presentations. And George, we will go ahead and start with you.
Great. Thank you, Dillon. And again, thank you so much for the endorsement of ICAN. It really means something. And Ruth, it's very good to meet you. I look forward to speaking more this evening. So I mentioned earlier, I mentioned earlier that I've been a resident for 20 years. And one of the reasons why we chose to live in West Hollywood is, of course, because my husband and I wanted a place where we could feel safe. We wanted to be able to walk down the street and hold hands if we choose to. And one of the reasons why we chose to live on the east side is because, as Dillon mentioned, the city has, back in the Refusnik days, people have fled the former Soviet Union and they've moved to West Hollywood. And that is where they're really concentrated. So my husband is a Jew. He felt a lot more comfortable on the east side. That's why we make it our home there. There are alarming issues when it comes to anti-Semitism across the country. We know this, but the problem is that it was never supposed to be in West Hollywood. And things said about Jews today, if you put any other minority group and replace the word Jew, the very people saying those things would absolutely do every single thing that they could to destroy the person who said it. So in West Hollywood, we have a number of issues. And yes, it certainly does predate 2023. I mentioned I'm a public safety commissioner. Public safety is the whole reason I got involved in the city. I just moved there to lead a nice, quiet life where private people, when my part of the city became a lot less safe, that's when I started a neighborhood watch group. One of the founders of the city, she actually told me, she said, well, if you want to do something, start a neighborhood watch group. And she pushed me all along and she made sure that I did it. And when the defunding efforts started, that's when I really got involved. So we're talking about 2022. And we've recently seen, just so all of these things can be connected, and I know you're going to do some connections internationally later, but we've had a controversy here in the States about the LA Times not endorsing Vice President Kamala Harris. So the moment that happened, everyone was trying to make connections to Elon Musk and come up with some sort of MAGA excuse, but I knew what the reason was. The reason was the daughter of the owner of the LA Times, Nika Sun-Cheong. And since then, the New York Times has done an extensive story talking about this and saying that it is because of her support for Hamas that she killed this endorsement. The reason I know about her is because I've dealt with her before. She was appointed by a former council member to the Public Safety Commission, the body on which I now sit. And when she got there, the entirety of her being was to defund our police, which is particularly offensive to me as a gay man, because West Hollywood built the kind of police force to protect us. It is the kind of police force that liberals have been pushing for across the country, and 40 years of hard work did that. So when they are patrolling a neighborhood that was founded by Russian Jews, gay men, lesbians, trans community, we've all historically been targets of hate, and they're there to protect us. So then you have this outside force coming in and saying, no, all of your hard work doesn't matter. It's not good enough. You should do away with it. That's what really got me involved. And I'm very proud that once Councilmember Meister was reelected, that she appointed me to the Public Safety Commission. Nika left. She got her pound of flesh. She got them to vote to defund 10 of our police officers after we had already lost officers during COVID. We don't have nearly enough. And then council voted to move forward with cutting 4. And here's where it gets really bad. The Department of Homeland Security in November of 2022, again predating October 7th, issued a warning of increased terrorist threats by domestic terrorists against the LGBTQ and the Jewish communities, which is West Hollywood. Council majority, including Mayor Erickson, current Mayor Erickson, against whom I am running, voted to cut those deputies who are there to protect us. So one of the main things that we need to do to protect not just the Jewish community, but all of us, is to have more sworn deputies. We should have closer to 88 for a city our size. We currently have 62, and that's one of the first things that I would do. And when I was appointed to the Public Safety Commission before I was even sworn in, knowing the history of anti-Semitism that we face, I made certain that I reached out to rabbis at our local temples And I arranged for High Holy Days for there to be a decoy car there, extra patrols, just to see if there were any things that could be done, that needed to be done. So that's a quick wrap up of that. So Nika is still a problem, and she is still doing things even on a national scale. So I just wanted to sort of tie that in with the city, because Dillon, you talked about how do these things affect on a local level. That's just one part of it. So I certainly have more to say, but I'll let Jordan go next.
Thank you, George. And thank you to ICAN for hosting this conversation. And of course, thank you for your endorsement. This was probably one of the most important endorsements to me. I was so excited to interview after filling out the endorsement form. And then when I just found out that George and I got endorsed because we were the right candidates, I was a little bummed I didn't get to actually speak, but I'm still very excited and very honored. And thank you, Dillon, for hosting this. And of course, thank you to, I know you said to just call you Ruth, but I'll settle for middle ground and I'll say Knesset member Ruth. Thank you so much for being here. I know it's early there, and I hope you're staying safe. I know it's a little bit different there than it is here. We're not as worried about missiles coming to hit us as unfortunately you have to be. Just to give you a brief background, my name is Jordan Cockeram. I am running for West Hollywood City Council. I am from Minnesota originally, but when I moved here about 12 years ago, I landed in this city that I didn't even know was its own city, only later to discover that West Hollywood was this bastion of a haven for LGBTQ people, Jews, Russians, 2 of 3 of those of which I am. I'm not Russian. So I'm running for West Hollywood City Council because I believe in the power of community and the transformative impact of dedicated, compassionate leadership. West Hollywood has been more than just a city to me. It's been my home away from home for as long as I've been here. However, as we all know, our city is facing some challenges that require bold and innovative solutions, from the rising cost of living and then, of course, to the need for safer streets, not just from regular crime, but now from acts of anti-Semitism, which George had already highlighted, is something that we didn't think would happen here. It's clear that we need leaders who are willing to actually listen and act and fight for the well-being of our residents and our city. And right now, we don't have that. So many people have shared their frustrations and concerns with me, expressing a desire for a change and a return to the values that make West Hollywood unique and make it the place that people want to live. And after talking to tons of residents, I've heard their calls for someone to step up and guide our city back on track, and I'm ready to answer that call. Anti-Semitism, and I'm really glad, Dillon, that you worded it this way earlier, because something that I've noticed that people say is that, oh, we're experiencing anti-Semitism now. Well, we're not experiencing anti-Semitism now. We've been experiencing anti-Semitism for 3,000 years. We're experiencing a rise in anti-Semitism, a huge rise in anti-Semitism, and that's the problem. And not only is it just happening on our streets, but now it is starting to infiltrate our government, where we have city council candidates who are actively working with organizations that are funding governments or any sort of groups that are anti-Israel and that are threatening their safety and their security. One of the things that I always tell people when talking about Israel is that Israel can afford to win every single war, but Israel can't afford to lose a single war, because if Israel falls, the Middle East falls. And it's our duty and our responsibility to make sure that that does not happen. And with this rise and increase in anti-Semitism, we have to figure out a way to combat it. And unfortunately, a lot of it is coming from within and coming from people in our own city and in our own government. We do have a city council member who voted to cut sheriff's deputies, and I'm sure all of you are shocked, but guess what? Crime increased, and so did anti-Semitism. That was absolutely the wrong thing to do. And we need to make sure that our sheriff's deputies have the resources they need to keep us safe. Because while I do always say that the number one job of a council member is to listen to its residents and constituents, really their number one job is to make sure that the city is safe. Because if the city's not safe, then you don't have a city. So I think that we should be increasing our funding and resources to whatever our sheriffs need to make sure that we are a safe city, because there are buildings just 2 blocks down the street from me that had swastikas and pro-Hamas messages spray painted on buildings. And this is 2 blocks from where I live. I never thought that would happen. Another thing I think we need to be doing is bringing these incidences and stories to light and making sure that everybody knows about them, because unfortunately a lot of people aren't as engaged as we would like them to be, and knowledge turns into power and turns into education and turns into tolerance. So when these events happen, we really need to bring them to light and make sure that people are aware of them. But that is also why I am so excited to have former Knesset member Ruth here, because we need to know solutions, and we've got questions, and she's the expert. So I'm so honored to be here and to hear her speak, and so we can learn. And so if I am looking down, I'm taking notes. That's why.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Jordan. And Ruth, so thank you so much again, Ruth, for joining us this morning for you and this evening for us. Before we just jump into your presentation, did you want to comment quickly? I'd like to show you a video of council member or city council comments that were given, not in West Hollywood, thank God, it was in another city. But Ruth, would you want to comment on what George and Jordan said first before you see this? Because I think what they said was pretty, I hope, heartfelt and extraordinary to have you here as an Israeli.
I think that it's very important to have the kind of courage that both of you display, because it's not easy to step up and to basically go against the trend. Even though the trend is upside down, basically what progressive, very liberal organizations, so-called liberal progressive organizations, try to convince people is that funny concepts like defunding the police, which is supposedly the organ which is protecting that very liberalism and that very openness and pluralism, is absolutely normal. And they do succeed in convincing a lot of misinformed people that this is completely normal. And it takes courage, like you demonstrate, and I thank you for that, to actually go against that trend and to really speak to young people, to young audiences, to liberal audiences, to people who care about those precise values, and tell them, no, that's not the right way of dealing with the situation. In fact, it's not only not the right way, it's the opposite of what needs to be done. And I salute you for this courage. That's something very important that I wanted to say. It's not a given. It's not a given. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Ruth. So basically, I just wanted to give you that moment to reply, because what we're about to watch is basically the exact opposite of the great words we've heard. So this is public comment from the city of Long Beach as they were considering a ceasefire resolution. And I want viewers to see this and to understand that this is a city council meeting. This is public comment, and this was just a few months ago. So here it is.
I heard a Jewish girl outside say, "I'm afraid to wear my Star of David because, I may be persecuted."
After 73 days, and for some of us way before that, our elected officials have proven that they do not stand for the people, that they are puppets controlled by the Zionist lobby.
Israel does not have the right to self-defense, and in supporting so, the council would be justifying the ongoing attacks in Gaza and in the West Bank.
I want to present two provable facts. Every day, Israel detains 500 to 700 Palestinian children in Gaza and the West Bank. And additionally, Israel is a known safe haven for child sex offenders and pedophiles all over the world, including newly Ghislaine Maxwell, who is an accomplice of known predator Jeffrey Epstein. As a survivor of sexual assault, I know what this is. This is child sex trafficking. The occupation must end.
Zionism is not about protecting Jews. Zionism is a project to conscript Jews to act as human shields for U.S. empire, which means U.S. corporate interests. So I don't want to hear anything about how this is about defending my people. Thank you. And I want to add further that if we included any language about, denouncing Hamas, I think is utterly ridiculous for
I don't know what it's going to take. Maybe it's learning that black Jews have been given forced sterilization through Depo-Provera. Maybe it's looking at AIPAC giving money to both sides of the equation, and that'll interfere with your political ideas. I don't know if y'all are here for a good time or a long time, but you represent us. You do.
What our president and all other Jewish-supported media has been supporting and saying, the 40 children were not massacred. They were not burned. And you can go and read yourself. So the real terrorism is from Israel. They're controlling our media right here. They don't let any pro-Palestinian news come out.
Okay, so you guys get the idea. So yeah, I guess that was from last December 2023 when Long Beach considered a ceasefire resolution, and you can see the language was extreme, and you can imagine that. Again, I want viewers to remember that while many of the people making public comment were doing so about foreign countries, many of them transposed Israel for Jews or Zionist for Jews, and beyond that, I want you to remember, there are immigrant Jews, and there are immigrant Jews from Israel who live here, who live in Long Beach, and imagine how such language would make them feel. And bear in mind, and George, as you said, we have someone on the city council, we have two people in the city council who promote that ideology significantly. So Ruth, just from your vantage point as a expert on all these matters, and you've seen this around the world. What's the first thing that you would, or the top of mind thing that you would want to share with George and Jordan after seeing this kind of public comment, and bearing in mind what they may experience while they're in public office?
So, first of all, I think the main issue is to have information, to be educated about what's really going on. I just heard some of the comments that you ran, Dillon, and the disinformation and honestly, some of the things that were being said are, we're talking about an educated part of California, speaking to relatively, well learned people. And this is exactly one of the points that I want to stress, that the enemy, and I'll explain in a minute, has been for years infiltrating the West and American society. And a lot of conceptions that are completely upside down have been infiltrated not only into the campuses where we see the encampments, we see the hatred, we see the burning of American flags, we see the demonstrations and the hatred, but also into the school system, which is a very decentralized system in the United States of America, which means that they had to do a lot of legwork to go from board meeting to board meeting, from city to city, to actually get the curriculum that promotes radicalism, Marxism, and other concepts that are foreign to the United States of America, and to bring in completely upside down ideas, some of which we just heard in the comments about a safe haven for pedophiles, and about one lady even mentioned there 500 detainees, by the way, children detainees, she mentioned, on a daily basis, which, I would encourage you to encourage your congregations to ask what do you rely on? Where is the actual citation from? What is the information that you lean upon? Because that's quite a significant issue to speak about. Where do you take your information? What do you, in fact, lean upon when you come and you say that there are those detainees? And how does that connect to basically this congregation and this community? How do you then translate that complete misconception into your policies that are on the local basis? So that's my comment regarding what we've just seen there. But Dillon, tell me when you want me to start my actual presentation, because I have something a little bit which may sound a teeny bit shocking in the beginning to share with the viewers.
Go ahead. You can begin now. Thank you.
All right. So I want to say something that may sound a little bit crazy, but in a sense, what had happened on October 7th in 2023, that's just about 1 year ago, in the south of Israel, and the horrific aggression that had taken place, the murders, the massacres, the rapes, the calling of parents and boasting and gloating online about murdering with one's own hands 10 or more Jews, and absolutely medieval, horrific deeds that had taken place, a true reincarnation of a pogrom against Jewish and non-Jews in the south of Israel, including Arab Bedouins and foreign workers from the east. In a manner of speaking, there is a very, very big silver lining to it, which is a horrid thing to say, but it's very, very important for me to mention because it brought into light something which was always there, but it was under the surface. It brought a public awareness, a potential public awareness of people like the ones that we just heard, that Dillon just allowed us to hear, that we're always there. You all know it, you all know them, but it became okay. It became normalized. And I want to try and explain how that came about, how in the United States of America, particularly in those very liberal, very pluralistic, very multicultural societies, like West Hollywood, for example, you could hear things like that. This was in Long Beach, but you hear all the anti-Semitism and the rising hatreds and the bigotry, and it's normal. It's okay. It's the trend. It's accepted. How did that come about? And yeah.
I do just want to tell people too that I want people who are watching and listening to know that you've been to West Hollywood. You've worked with us in West Hollywood
Yes.
before, so you're not speaking from a foreign. You are in Israel, but you've been here. You know the city, and I wanted to make that clear to people.
Oh, thank you for mentioning it. I thought that was obvious. I try not to speak of things that I absolutely have no idea about, but I do want to share that I also worked for 10 years in my career for the Federation of All Local Governments in Israel. So the local level is very crucial to me and very, very important. Both candidates mentioned community. Community is a very strong concept, very strong for one's own feeling of security, and very strong because it's a matter of values. So you sit and you live and you create your family and your life in a community where your values are sort of everyday, allowing your everyday life to be like you want it to be, like you feel it is ethical to be. And the disruption thereof is crucial to a feeling of insecurity. And the local level, at the end of the day, that's what makes you live the life that you live, with all respect to the national and the federal. And this is something that's very close to home for me as well. After 10 years of being the Deputy Director General of the Federation of All Local Governments in Israel as well. So having said that, I want to take you on a much, much wider level, a much more seemingly far away level, and to really hone in on how that crazy far away Middle Eastern Gulf level comes home to also West Hollywood and other localities in the United States of America. So in 1979, there was the Islamic Revolution in Iran. And it is no longer Iran, it is the Islamic Republic of Iran. And everything that I will say refers actually to the regime and to the Islamic Republic of Iran and to the mullah entity that has overtaken Iran with its extremism and Shiite radicalism, rather than to the Iranian people. And that entity, at its base and ideology, has radical Shiite Islamic ideology and wants to export it not only to the region, but to the entire world. I know it sounds like a horror film, but it is what it is. That is the base of radical Islam, not Islam, radical Islam, taking over more and more territory and having a worldwide caliphate based on Sharia, which is the Islamic law. So if we're talking about the Islamic Republic of Iran, it's Shiite Islam. If we're talking about Qatar, it's Sunni Islam. They cannot stand one another. In fact, they're arch enemies. But when it comes to hatred, bigotry, disclusion, and not inclusion, it's the same. So there's a low common denominator of bigotry, hatred, and everything else. Now, how did they come to power is a very interesting concept, which should be something to learn in the United States of America, and particularly in localities such as West Hollywood. And that's by riding on the liberal camp, the young liberal demonstrators that wanted a change in Iran, wanted more openness in Iran, like the Arab Spring in Egypt. Very similarly, in 2011, when there was the Arab Spring, young demonstrators wanting freedom and pluralism and so on. And then the Islamic forces in Egypt, it was the Muslim Brotherhood, Sunni extreme radical Islamists. In Iran, it was Shiite. But this radicalism took over the young liberal voices and the demonstrators, and they basically forced the entire country, and it is a huge country, into becoming an Islamic republic with Sharia-based law and everything that we are seeing, including a very difficult situation for women. And that's why we also see a huge movement against enforcement of wearing certain headgear and so many other things. We won't go into the problems of Iran. What I do want to go into is what the Islamic Republic of Iran started to do in the region from 1979, basically implementing its ideology, its basic and core belief, which is inherent to the entire regime. And that's disintegrating countries in the region from within, I'm repeating, disintegrating countries in the region from within and taking over into the chaos. So chaos and instability serves them, and then they go in, they create a proxy or a local sort of branch or arm of themselves, having that arm perform whatever the Islamic Republic of Iran needs to promote its own interests, not the interests of the locality, not the interests of the people, but its own interests. And I'll give very many examples. So first and foremost, they started to do this in Lebanon. Okay, that was not chronologically in the 70s, in the end of the 70s, but in the beginning of the 80s, with the uprisings in Lebanon, the 1982 war, there was a lot of chaos. There are a lot of different ethnic groups in Lebanon. The Islamic Republic of Iran recognized the potential for instability in Lebanon, went into this beautiful country and created the Hezbollah. The Hezbollah, the Shiite arm, very well-armed, well-funded Shiite arm of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and basically made what the Hezbollah has become almost a inherent huge part of what Lebanon is today, with the dysfunctioning government, with the dysfunctioning economy, with the ethnic warring between and amidst themselves, and so on and so forth. And that's just Lebanon. What about Syria? Syria has been in a civil war for years, with their own government and leadership basically massacring tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of their own people. What the Islamic Republic of Iran recognized as the potential chaos and instability, went in, helped the Assad regime murder, massacre, carnage their own people, and then basically took over. They have an interest in Syria in, again, promoting their own ideas, exporting their own radical Islamic Shiite ideology, putting down those who are against it, and basically getting territory and having their own Shiite militias sit in Syria and controlling Syria de facto. They did the same thing in Yemen with the Houthis. They did the same thing in the West Bank under the Fatah leadership of Abu Mazen or Mahmoud Abbas. What they did is they took the radical Islamist group called Hamas and tried to, over the years, strengthen them in the West Bank to undermine Abu Mazen and Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian leadership in the West Bank. They did the same thing in Gaza. They took the Hamas. They don't care about the Hamas. They don't care about the Palestinians. They don't care how many Palestinians get killed. What they do care about is that this organization, the radical Islamist organization, is carrying out the Iranian ideology, the Islamic Republic of Iran's ideology and extremism in the Gaza Strip, with the indoctrination and the incitement in order to control that piece of land as well. They've been doing this for years in Jordan, and Jordan, the Hashemite kingdom of Jordan, has been a stronghold of the United States of America, and Israel has been helping it for years. But it prevents the territorial integrity and the territorial continuity of Iran, which has taken over Iraq, which has taken over Lebanon, taken over Syria, taken over the West Bank. Little Jordan is stuck in the middle, preventing that territorial continuity. And the Islamic Republic of Iran, I keep again stressing that it's not Iran, it's the Islamic Republic of Iran, has been trying for years to undermine the kingdom, to create instability in the kingdom, to take the majority of the Palestinian population in the kingdom and make them radical, make them belong to Hamas. That is what the Islamic Republic of Iran has been doing for years. Now, why is all this relevant? Because it's not about the Middle East. It's not about Israel. It's not about the Jews. The Jews in Israel are the first step, because we too in Israel prevent the territorial continuity and hegemony of the Islamic Republic of Iran. Israel and Little Jordan, okay? Two little countries that prevent the territorial sort of control of the Islamic Republic of Iran. But it's not about just controlling the region. The ideology, the radical Islamist ideology of the Islamic Republic of Iran and Qatar, but again, these are Sunnis, these are Shiites, is a worldwide caliphate, I repeat, and that's where the US and Europe come in. Ever since 1979, and again, I know this sounds like a horror film, but it is what it is, the infiltration was not only into regional entities and countries and proxy building in our region. They began to create Shiite cells. There were dormant cells at the beginning in Europe, throughout Europe, in mosques, in NGOs promoting so-called liberal forms, liberal ideas. Why? Why is that? Because they understood, like they understood when in 1979 they wanted to come to power, they need to ride on those ideas, to take over those ideas, and to basically influence the thinking, the trends, the dilemmas that were associated with the young people, with the young generation, with the publics in the West. And they did this in America as well. They created Shiite cells in so many places you cannot even believe, in schools, in campuses, in think tanks, around the country, throughout the United States of America, supporting people to infiltrate thinking groups. What do I mean by thinking groups? Liberals, LGBT, Greenpeace groups, also far-right groups, groups that have nothing to do with Islamic radical Shiite ideology or Islamic Sunni radical ideology, nothing. If you're an LGBT and you step foot in any Muslim country, okay, any Muslim country, perhaps except the United Arab Emirates, and that too is not allowed publicly, but any Muslim country, whether it's Egypt, whether it's Jordan, whether it's the West Bank, and of course, those controlled by the Islamic Republic of Iran and or its proxies like Gaza, for example, you get murdered because that is unacceptable in that part of the world and by that ideology. You get thrown off the rooftops and you get hanged on cranes in the city center. That publicly, that is what happens to LGBTQ. But they understood that in order to infiltrate the minds of the people in the West, they needed to get into those groups, social media, to influence their thinking, to speak like them, and then to create the ideas of Marxism, radicalism, extremism in the thinking, in the education, in the curriculum. The same thing was done by Qatar. But again, I stress, Qatar is Sunni extremism. The Islamic Republic of Iran is Shiite extremism. Both have one underlying motive and objective: to create a worldwide Islamic radical caliphate to influence the minds of the people. Now, what is the lowest common denominator that works really well and has always been there, as all of us had said? Anti-Semitism and anti-Israel sentiment sort of goes together, whether it's the far right or the far left. This minority has always been persecuted. So to have the world galvanized against the Zionist entity, the white colonizers, which I personally fit very well into that specific stereotype because of my skin color. But there are so many Sephardi Jews that absolutely have nothing to do with that, from North Africa and or Ethiopian Jews and so on and so forth. But brainwashing is something that the Islamic Republic of Iran has done since its very beginning. And that is what they've started to do very many years ago, creating the groundwork for October 7th. So when October 7th happened and gang rapes, beheadings, medieval kind of torturing to people, burning people alive, taking grandmothers as hostages on motorcycles, beating women, hanging them upside down. I would say something really horrific, but I want to share it with you because you need to know. Cutting penises off men while they are still alive and sometimes with family members watching, horrific things. When all of this happened, the entire world, instead of coming to support the group that was massacred, burned, gang raped, and attacked, did something very strange. They demonstrated even before the Israeli army went to retaliate in Gaza, before one soldier went into Gaza, the entire world was up on its feet with demonstrations in Europe, in Canada, and in the United States, in campuses throughout the United States against Israel. Why is that? Because of this infiltration, because the groundwork was there. So why do I say that there is a silver lining? Because all of these demonstrations and all of that hatred and all of that bigotry came out in such strong, massive, horrific strength, they almost overdid their homework, that normal, regular people could open their eyes and see. This is not about LGBT rights. This is not about liberal ideals. This is not anti-Zionism and anti-colonialism. This is about a domination of another foreign entity, because burning American flags has nothing to do with Palestine. Calling down with France in demonstrations has nothing to do with Palestine. Calling in demonstrations, pardon my language, fuck Germany has nothing to do with demonstrations. Hurting physically and attacking UK nationals has absolutely nothing to do with Palestine, non-Jewish nationals. Down with France is against France. Down with Germany is against Germany. Down with the UK is against the UK. Burning American flags and institutional symbols in the United States is against the United States. And that's where it's going. The infiltration of schools, curricula. Look at what your kids are learning, not on campuses, in the schools. Why are they learning what they're learning? Why will they not come out and say the really rather stupid things that we heard before on video, some of which have really nothing to do with reality? And an educated, well-learned person would say, who believes that? But people believe that. Why do they believe that? How can they believe that? How? 500 to 700 children detainees on a daily basis by the IDF. Let's just take that sentence. It's checkable. One can examine the truth behind it. But why does that go by? Because of the groundwork that has been done for years. Because under the surface, in the United States of America, in the localities, in the cities, in the towns, in the counties, in the regions, there's been a lot of work that's put in by the Islamic Republic of Iran on the Shiite side, by Qatar on the Sunni side. And that is where the problem is. And that's where every single one of you can do a lot a lot to make sure that it stops right there before you lose the very society that you cherish with the values that you cherish that have nothing to do with Islamic extremism. Nothing. Nothing. Because you are non-Jews, because you are non-believers, not non-Jews, non-believers. And as non-believers, you do not have the same rights as a Muslim believer. And if you're a Muslim and you're not the right extremist Muslim, you cannot speak up. You will be shut down like they do in the Islamic Republic of Iran, like they do in the other countries that they've taken over. And that's exactly the dilemma. You have it in you, you have the tools to stop what is being going on under the surface. And the silver lining is that it's already in our faces. It's overt. It's not covert anymore. It's out there. Just look, listen, hear. All of these things that are happening, that's the infiltration. And it's important that really courageous, significant leaders on the local level, on the regional level, and on the federal level counter that. Because that means really not allowing to embolden this particular infiltration. And that's the new face of anti-Semitism. It's anti-Western values. It's not ever just anti-Semitism. It begins with anti-Semitism because it's easy to galvanize support for that. But it never ends with that, ever. Throughout history, one just needs to look at history and learn. Thank you.
Thank you, Ruth. That was an amazing, amazing presentation, and really eye-opening. So for George and Jordan, do either of you have questions, comments? Jordan?
Yeah, I'd just like to say thank you so much for that presentation. That was incredible. And it's really, really nice to hear from an expert that there's a silver lining, because I can tell you, as the grandson of an immigrant Jew from Israel, it often doesn't feel like there's a silver lining, especially here sometimes. So to hear that from you means a lot. The video, Dillon, that you showed, of course, was, I don't even know how to respond to some of the things that people said. Ruth, I think it was kind of you to say that people were smart and learned, because it certainly didn't seem like that from that video. And you also said that you like to only speak about things that you know. And I wish they did the same thing, because they clearly don't know what they're speaking about. There's so much that they shouldn't be saying, and that is completely incorrect and obviously incorrect. One of the things I wanted to ask, and please correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't been to Israel for 10 years, so it's been a while. But I think one of the differences between anti-Semitism maybe in the Middle East or anti-Semitism in America right now is that in Israel, obviously, where it's a primarily Jewish country, the anti-Semitism or your enemies are from the Islamic Republic of Iran, who are on the other side of borders, or on the other side of where there's customs. And although you're being constantly attacked by rockets from them, and congratulations, by the way, on your efforts for staying safe, and also for ridding the world of some awful Hezbollah leaders. It's more kind of on the outside, or like you were saying, where it's spreading. There are the countries of Israel and the countries of Jordan who are kind of preventing that flow. Whereas in West Hollywood, or in the United States, let's say, the threat is almost coming from within. They are spreading their information from the Islamic Republic of Iran, and for all I know, my next door neighbor in my apartment, they're not, but my next door neighbor in my apartment could be, radicalized, and they're right next door, and there is no customs protection agency between the two of us, and there is no military force between the two of us. what would be your kind of like recommendation for combating that, other than the things that I said earlier, which are, obviously an increased police force and increased information and letting people know. But when, your threat could be your neighbor, it feels like it's different. And if there are threats like that in Israel, please let me know. I assume there aren't as many coming from within Israel, but maybe there are, and I'm wrong about that.
Okay, so thank you for that question. It's a very big question, and I'll leave Israel for a second on the side, because if we have time, I'll also go into that, because it's complex. But I do want to very much address what you said on what can be done. So there are many things that can be done, and yes, there are within the American society, which is a very open society, a very liberal society, and the First Amendment is a very inherent part of that society and its values, and needs to be maintained up to a point where it is in fact incitement and hatred and bigotry, and can cause physical and or other harm. And therefore, one of the things that I think can be done by people like yourselves is to educate the public, because they are getting the education, into their veins, basically, and it's wrong. It's wrong. There is an infiltration into the schools, into the curricula, into the educational systems. You need to review that. So if you do that on your local level, on your city level, whatever it is, check that, examine that, examine what your children, your community's children are actually learning, because you may be surprised. It's right there. There's no customs. They're going to tell you that in a few years' time. It's going to come back to you, and you are going to be, where did this come from? It's right from within. These curricula need to be reviewed. They need to be looked at and checked by intelligent, well-learned people, not by Jews necessarily, by a multitude of people that care about the values of America, of real liberalism and not make-believe liberalism, where Jews, Zionists, Israel, and others, because as I said, it never stops there, are being, blacklisted. And that is what is being done. That's number one. Check on the local level, and you have the advantage in the local level that it is a manageable size, because on the federal level, it's a huge undertaking. But on the local level, check your think tanks, check your NGOs. You can't necessarily stop them, but you can educate the public about what they're doing. What is the message that is coming from different NGOs? There are different societies that are called all kinds of beautiful words of solidarity and brotherhood and friendship and everything you can imagine that sounds amazing, and they're promoting hatred and bigotry. Check that, examine that, don't be shy. They're not shy. Check that, so that the minds of the young people and the public are not brainwashed. And that is the modus operandi of what the radicals are doing. That's their way of infiltration for years, for years. So don't be shy about checking, examining, and even just calling them out, saying, do you know what your kids are studying in the school? You're in the United States of America. This is the land of freedom. Do you know that they're studying Marxist ideology, radical ideas, extremist ideas? Do you know this? Check and educate the masses, open people's eyes. That's number one. Number two, you guys are potentially legislators, and you can make a difference. You can legislate. I know that Dillon has been at the forefront of this efforts to maintain, to keep, to give a safe haven to the values that are dear to America. Keep that, maintain that, safeguard that with legislation. You will have the ability to do that. Get teams from the public, some of whom are perhaps listening in the audience right now, to support you. They have expertise. There are groups of lawyers with legal expertise. People want to help. They want to maintain and safeguard their communities from infiltration by extremist ideology. Have them help. Have set up groups. You get community involved. You have them feeling an ownership over the process as well. And do something about the legislation, not allowing that kind of infiltration, not allowing bigotry, not allowing to hurt minorities. Also, check out and examine the the Muslim community of the Iranians. There are not many perhaps in West Hollywood. There are more in other parts of the city, but there is a community. There is a community. And most probably, they're against the Islamic Republic of Iran. And they're against the bigotry. They're against this infiltration. And they know it better than anyone else because they've lived through it. They know on their own skin, on their own bodies, on their own minds. And they're Muslims. They will explain and help you to explain to the general public what this monster really looks like and to explain that it's real and not a make-believe Zionist kind of idea that we concocted and some kind of a conspiracy. No. And they are Muslims. They've experienced this. So there are so many things that can be done. First and foremost, take off the blinds from everyone's eyes. When people see, it's shocking enough. They'll want to help. They'll want to do. Those rare moments in which you'll find people that do not want to help, to maintain the American ideals and the American values, you understand that they're actually those extremists themselves.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. If George is available, I'll let it be his turn. But if he's not, then I'm happy to ask another question.
Yeah, I did want to mention to those watching. He did have you may have noticed he was not at home or at the office in the video. So he had a personal emergency and he was able to join us from a medical facility. But he's fine. Everything's fine. But he did have to go take care of his family. So thank you to George for coming, and we're sorry to see you go early. But Jordan, go ahead and ask another question.
We have time. I know you got up really early over there, and but as many questions as I can get in, I'm going to try.
At least, I'm just going to interrupt you. My apologies. At least it wasn't because of sirens this time.
Yeah, exactly right.
That's always nice. Yes,
silver lining there too.
Another silver lining, exactly. So, as you know, George and I are running for West Hollywood City Council. And in the United States, cities answer to counties, counties answer to states, and the state answers to the federal government. Now, there are people like me who had every single member of their family murdered in the Holocaust, except for two. My great-grandfather and his younger sister, who was able to get on kinder transport to England safely, and he was able to use false documents to get to Israel to escape, and then ended up being a refugee in a refugee camp. But we want to really support Israel, but on a local level, we don't have votes or power over the military or how money is spent or funding to provide Israel or assist Israel with the defenses and the supplies that they need. What, if anything, and maybe the answer is just nothing other than to lobby our officials in higher office, but what kind of things can we do to help Israel specifically as a country, if any?
So again, if you ask me, the mistake that many people make is that It's only on the federal level that decisions pertaining to Israel are being made. But it's not like that. It's the minds of the people that finally, in a democracy, are the ones that influence the decision makers. And this is the beautiful thing about America and countries like Israel. The people on every level, whether it's the city, whether it's the county, whether it's the state, and finally on the federal and the national level, they count because it's a democracy. So people's minds count. The enemy understood that. That's why it infiltrated on the local level very much. You'll see on every locality, there are people running with that stupid, crazy, misinformed ideology that we heard. And that's not random. That's actually pre-planned for years. It's not random. The Students for Palestine movement is not a random movement to help Palestinians. No, it's nothing to do with just helping Palestinians. It's about radical Islamic ideology that has no place in the United States of America, in Canada, in places that supposedly support freedom. By the way, the members of the Muslim Brotherhood in Canada are the highest number of membership in the entire world in Canada. Why? Because it's not outlawed. Where is the Muslim Brotherhood outlawed? In Egypt, in Jordan, in the United Arab Emirates, in Saudi Arabia. Why? Because they threaten the regime. There are destabilizing factors. These countries know what the Muslim Brotherhood or the Hamas or the Shiite extremists on the other side, what they are capable of doing. They know, they outlaw them. The West is naive. Plus, it has an inherent so-called weakness, which is also its strength, and that's democracy. So the First Amendment allows them to speak, but it doesn't mean that you don't need to make everybody know the truth. And it's easy to support the truth. It's not just about lobbying. It's about explaining to people, no, there's no colonialism here. No, you're wrong. There was not one Jew in Gaza on October 6th. One. And if there'd been one, he'd be murdered. While there were very many Gazans working in Israel on October 6th. And there was a discussion of 17,000 more getting work permits just after that weekend of Israel's festival. They're actually 25% of Arab Israelis with voting rights. They can be the head of the High Court of Law in Israel. They can be members of Knesset in Israel. They can be anything they want in Israel. So this apartheid nonsense is a load of garbage. So all of these things, most people don't know. A lot of people don't know. And they are being indoctrinated in your schools, by your think tanks, by a lot of your NGOs. Check them.
So just on that point, Jordan, if you don't mind, I do want to jump in real quick because we've spoken a lot about infiltration and that, that the enemy, the call is coming from inside the house, right? And I want to make it clear to people that we're not speaking in abstract terms. And by the way, Ruth, you may not know this. In the American presidential election, that phrase was used by one of the candidates. And I'm sure in West Hollywood, people are watching this who are opposed to these candidates and want to jump on that phrase. But I want to make it very clear that we do have serious infiltration, and that might not be a kind word. But when we have teachers who are teaching within our schools, and we have LAUSD school, an elementary school here in West Hollywood, we had a situation just recently in a largely Persian Jewish school, public school in Westwood, where we call it Tehrangeles kind of as a joke because it's such a large Persian community there. And a fifth grade teacher was trying to teach Palestine in the classroom. This isn't part of the curriculum. It's not part of anything official, but they took it upon themselves because they felt like they had objectively the moral right and indeed maybe obligation to teach that to fifth graders. We had a situation at a charter school where right after October 7th, and I believe it was even first graders, they were using crayons and writing the words genocide. So when Ruth is talking about that we have infiltration, this is real, and these are extreme ideologies, and these people are violating the law. We as an organization are highlighting that, and so where elected officials can't educate themselves, we're here to educate you as well. And just on that point, I also want to emphasize that where we have the examples in the schools and the curriculum, I want to mention specifically the city of West Hollywood as well, and I'll bring it up again. We have a situation where you have a vice mayor who is over 10 years ago, 15 years ago, was a founding member of an extremist Students for Justice in Palestine, which is now being outlawed on many college campuses around the country. She is now the vice mayor of the city of West Hollywood. She's soon to become the mayor, by the way, if certain votes happen, I guess. So this is a person who is going to be the head of a city who, for her day job, runs an anti-Israel organization. Consider the fact that she's talking to law enforcement, she's talking to other people who are potentially in public safety positions. And for me, that's concerning, especially when they glorify violence of October 7th.
Totally. It's insane.
And why should we feel safe? Now, what's interesting about this, and Jordan is familiar with this, Ruth, you don't know that. I haven't updated you about this, but so for people like me, of course, I'm going to call that out, right? And so what happens when we call it out now? I'm called I guess the insult is I'm a Republican. That's supposed to be the insult. I think they could do worse, but I'm a registered Democrat for anybody asking, or wondering. But they sideline you. They try to hide and say, I had one person tell me, "Oh, don't make it an issue with Chelsea because she's not running for anything high level. She won't do anything that has anything to do with Israel. Just keep it quiet." And I was actually threatened to say nothing because if I spoke out, then that would hurt the funding for my organization. Now, from my standpoint, if it's not clear for people who don't know, in my opinion, it is the 1930s in America again, in the world again, and we should speak out and speak up. And so when we have this kind of situation where the mayor and his allies are silencing concern about someone like this, where it's so extreme that the organization has even been called criminal in a recent post-October 7th report, that's a serious thing to take into consideration. And so I know that people are unhappy with my advocacy on this, but if you think I'm going to be quiet, you don't know me very well. So, Ruth, as you mentioned, infiltration, this is the real example right here. And I want people to understand that this is happening today. It's happening right now in the city of West Hollywood.
Absolutely. It's on all levels. And this is the fruit of work of many, many years of very sophisticated people that have an objective and they have a lot of patience and they have a kind of a historical take on life. They have, this is radical ideology that is coming into being. And let's put it this way. We will like it, we don't like it. We have the privilege of being able to expose it. And this is our challenge in our lifetimes. You ask what can be done, Jordan. I mean, this is what I think should be done. And God bless you, Dillon, for what you're doing, because in your vicinity, in your locality, you should really go through all of those kind of bodies, organizations, persons who have a public platform and examine what is going on, what are they actually putting forward to the general public, and expose that for what it is.
Yeah. So I will say, and Ruth, I didn't prompt you to say that, but just for you and everybody to know who's watching, after October 7th, we did implement what internally I kind of call it an Iron Dome for Israel here in the U.S., where we're monitoring every elected official at every level of government, every school board, commission, from social media to press releases to official documents. We're monitoring all of it. So all of these city councils and the members who voted, we know who voted where, we know who voted what, and we'll be watching them as they move along their career, and hopefully working to stop them. Ruth, I know we're way over time. Jordan, do you mind if Jordan has one last question?
With pleasure.
Jordan, yeah, I hope you have one.
I don't even have to ask one more question. I can just make it quick. I can just tell Ruth, because this is some good news, but well, sort of good news, I guess you can call it. But in California, we have started mandating in schools that we are checking people's, I guess, backgrounds, I guess you can call it. And of course, that alarmed the Jewish community because we have a history of bad things happening when people know what race or religion you are. We keep track of groups that are discriminated against. And right now, the Jewish population is number 2 on the list. And we have really great legislators like Laura Friedman, who we're hoping is going to win in our Congress. She's a state legislator right now, but who pushed to make sure that anti-Semitism is taught to students because of all the examples that Dillon had mentioned. Now it is passed in the legislature in the state of California and signed by the governor. It has been mandated that everyone in all schools have to be taught, because there were certain school districts that were using Israel and Gaza and Palestine as an example of colonialism when they obviously should not have been. So now that's been mandated that no matter where you are in California, you have to teach that there's a history of anti-Semitism, and it goes back quite far. So I guess another silver lining, sort of, other than the fact that people were teaching it in schools, like Dillon said. So I guess we get silver linings where we can get them, I guess. They're far and few between, and we get them where we can.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, thank you so much. Ruth, did you want to make any closing remarks? You there, Ruth? I think she froze.
Just
are you with me, Jordan? You're with me. Okay, good.
Yeah.
All right, let's try this. Nope, I think we lost Ruth. Okay, well, that's okay. So, she's back. Ruth, can you hear us now?
Yes, I can.
Thank God. Okay. Did you want to say goodbye or say any final words?
Sorry, I don't know what the last thing you heard was.
Yeah.
I just want to say again that I salute you for your work, for your courage, both Jordan and Dillon. And I really want to thank the people that took out of their time and to listen to the audience. It's not a given, it's not obvious, but it's really an issue of resilience. We can do something about this. Thank you so much for caring. That's the only thing that I really want to say, and it's heartfelt. Toda rabba.
Well, thank you so much for being here. Thank you. I mean, this was such an honor. Dillon told us a few days ago that we were getting this opportunity, and I said, I'll absolutely be there. Yes, I will. So this was fantastic. I really appreciate it. I know it's early in your time, and you're also dealing with a lot more life-threatening, well, at least imminently life-threatening issues than we are here. So I appreciate you being here so much. Thank you for all of the work that you've done, and know that we support you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. So thank you all for tuning in to this special forum. Thank you so much, Ruth, for joining us so early in the morning at a crazy time. And thank you, Jordan, and to George also for joining us this evening. Again, these are ICAN's endorsed candidates, and we urge everyone in West Hollywood to vote for them. So thank you all so much, and have a good night.
Thank you so much. Before Dillon leaves, I just want to say, if you have any questions or concerns about my campaign, I'll put it in the chat right now. You can check out my website at jordanforweho.com. My platforms are on there. My email is on there, and my phone number is on there. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to reach out. And I hope I can count on one of your 2 votes this November 5th.
wait, hold on. We have extra time. Do you have to run right now?
Oh, no, I don't have to.
All right, hold on. Let's do this the right way. So I think if I do this real quick, hold on. I want to make sure everybody sees your website. Let's do it like this. Bear with me here.
Take your time, no problem.
And we will do it.
I can't believe it's been an hour and a half and my cat hasn't once walked in front of the computer screen. That's almost a miracle in itself.
Well, and then you have my girl here also was good. So there's your website. So jordanforweho.com. Yeah?
Yes.
Excellent. Good. So thank you, everybody who is watching. I hope it was educational and informative. Jordan, thank you so much.
Thank you.
George, if you're still watching when you watch the repeat of this, you're awesome. Thank you so much. And to Alex, we hope you feel better. And everybody go vote and vote for George and Jordan. All right.
Thank you, everyone. Have a fantastic rest of your week.